Europe has more developers than the US, so why doesn't it have more startups too? Well, Daphne Leprince-Ringuet is joining us now to talk about that very question. So, Daphne, why is Europe lagging behind?
So the recent report by McKinsey, it highlights a key issue that is going on in Europe fundamentally, and that's that it's lagging behind its competitors in the technological race, and particularly behind the US and China. Now, that might seem counterintuitive because we hear a lot about European startups like Revolut, Bolt, or TransferWise, and they regularly make headlines because they're so successful. And they are really good examples of success stories, but they're not the entire story. The entire story also includes other numbers highlighted in the report. For example, the fact that in the last 20 years, Europe has lost half its share of superstar companies, which are companies that make more than $1 billion in revenue. So that's obviously reflective of a certain trend that's problematic in Europe. Why is that? The first reason is probably that European competitors, as I said, the US and China, are getting bigger and bigger and bolder, and they are becoming bigger competitors in the technology race. But that's not the only reason. There's also a more fundamental problem in European identity, and that's that European companies are not investing in the assets that are going to allow them to innovate and boost growth and productivity. Those assets are called intangible assets, so that's data, software, artificial intelligence, computer science, machine learning, blockchain, quantum, and so on and so forth. And those are the assets that can drive growth and innovation. Europe, when you look at the numbers, the European share of research and development for those digital assets is only 8% of the global research and development investments. If we compare to the USA, Europe spends 1.7 percentage points of its GDP less than the US on those digital assets. So obviously reflected in other numbers. I've obviously mentioned the loss of superstar companies, but also something that's crucial is that Europe is struggling to boost its startups into unicorn companies. Unicorn companies are those that are valued at more than $1 billion. So Revolut, Bolt, TransferWise that I just mentioned are all unicorn companies. But actually, compared to the US, that rate of transformation in Europe is only half that in the US. So again, highlighting that there is an issue here with Europe not being bold and ambitious enough to push its startups into unicorn companies.
Okay, so Daphne, what can be done now or steps taken down the road to change the narrative here?
So yeah, there's definitely, as I mentioned, external factors that can be worked on. I guess the fact that the US and China are growing are not really something that you have to work on. It's also something you have to compete against. But there's another factor that needs to be paid attention to, and that's very obviously that Europe is a multinational organization. There's almost 30 countries in Europe. So that creates problems that other countries don't have. It makes it much harder for a startup to scale up in Europe because obviously different countries have different regulations, different laws. So to target the European market as a whole is much more difficult. It's much harder to scale up and become this unicorn company that I just mentioned than it is in the US and China that have large homogeneous markets. So that's something that Europe can work on, and it already is. For example, we've got the European Automotive and Telecoms Alliance that tries to liaise between vendors, manufacturers, operators in this industry to push innovation and to sort of homogenize the continent across this industry. So Europe does have assets, so it can't just keep pushing. It has other assets that need to be worked on, that need to be, leveraged. For example, it's got huge amounts of software developers. It's got 5.7 million software developers. That compares to 4.4 million in the US. So it's got all those building blocks. Now it's just a matter of putting them all together to push this ambitious program of development and innovation. And I think that's the main takeaway from the report, is that it's a whole mindset that needs to change across Europe to push this program and be more bold and more ambitious.
Daphne, thank you so much. And for Daphne's full article and much more, you can find it all on ZDNet. Thanks for watching.